So I'm going to start putting the floor in. All I've got to do, run across the van, do some quick measurements from left to right, all the way across, get my pieces of wood, measure them, chop them into pieces. So here's my first one. Gone across, I've measured everything, chopped a piece of wood. This is 25mm pressure treated wood. Chop that to 69 inches. And that's going to go in there and get siliconed in. That's the first one. And do them all in increments. Do the straight bits, then do the pieces in the middle. So yes, let's go along and measure them. Here is a very rough copy of the van. It's obviously where the wheel arches are. So piece of wood cut across 69 inches. Number 2, 69, and then just measure them all across. Once I've got all them pieces, I'll put them in place and then measure different sections in between. So let's chop all them. So just a little tip when you're cutting, just because obviously I'm doing it by a handsaw because there's only a few. Line it up with the edge of your bed, but remember you've got about a couple of mil on your saw, so you're going to lose. So if you cut in to measure, make sure you're on over what you need to be, so that when you're cutting over it, not inside, otherwise it's going to be too small. That's the main sort of horizontal beams in, so that's the main structure. And then obviously now I'm just going to do some little sort of cross sections, mainly where either the sofa's going or the kitchen's going and the boxes and stuff, just to give it an extra bit of one support and 2 extra places to drill into. So cut them maybe with the offcuts and things. Got loads more anyway, but yeah, these will basically go in across ways as well. We have I've cut all the battens to size, put them all out on the floor. So today's plan is I need to stick them to the floor. I'm just going to use Sikaflex, stick them to the floor, no nails. Hopefully that will be strong enough, because before I can glue the battens around the wheel arches, I obviously need to put some Reflectix and vapor barrier over them so that I can create the seal. So plan is stick all these down, cut the king span to size, put all that in, put the foil tape over the top. So let's do that now. So there we have it, all the wood put into place. So I've sort of labelled them all 8, 9, 11, yeah, I've gone along, numbered them all. So now I need to take them out, brush up the van, give it a last little tickle of any points that we need, and then glue them down. So that's the floor, all nice and cleaned and brushed. So now it's time to start siliconing. I've put a little bit of EBT Sikaflex on the bit of wood just on top of where the little rivets are, not the whole way along, just where it's connected to the rivets, and put a load of weights on top. So I mean, you can see a little bit squeezing out. So I've not gone overkill, and we'll see. Just going to leave this one for about 10-15 minutes and see how this goes. I'm just about to wrap the wheel arches. So we've been to Tool Station and just quickly grabbed this. So this is Reflectix foil, insulation and vapor barrier. So this is what it should look like. Basically it's about so thick, a couple of mil thick. You have to wrap these wheel arches in this stuff and put the foil tape around it, so that obviously when your wood comes up to here and then your insulation on the floor and foil tape, it's a nice vapor barrier. So let's do that now. And there we are, all bubble wrapped, insulated and foil taped. Okay, so the best way I found to do it is basically put the wrap over, just tack it with a few bits of tape there and there so it's tight, pull it tight, and then these bits, rather than cutting it and risking putting a hole in your vapor barrier, I just literally fold them over like a bit of a wrapping paper, fold them over and then pull them in nice and tight, and then tape round the corners, and obviously I just put a bit of tape across there as well. Wrapped both the wheel arches in the foil, in Reflectix and foil, and basically the other thing I'm thinking now is I have lots of little offcuts left over and a bit of the roll. So whether or not it works probably doesn't, but what I'm thinking is basically on top of here I'm putting the wooden slats and then obviously the king span, but between these two gaps I'd say there's what, 2-3 centimeter gap. basically I'm just going to stick some of this foil to the van. So if I stick this down really hard, hopefully it'll, one, give it a bit of sound deadening, and two, potentially act as a little bit more of an insulation. So maybe wrong, might not do anything, might just be wasting my time, but I've got some leftovers, so I thought I'd give it a go. So the issue that I'm having basically now is, obviously I've just got some little weights. Once you put silicone on them and push them down, they're obviously taking 15-20 minutes to dry. So if I take the weights off, it's starting to lift up a little bit. So I have to leave this 50 minutes. It's a very slow job just because of the time it's taking for it to dry. So we'll keep going, and hopefully we've got time today to put in glue in all the floor, let it dry, and then cut the kingspan to size. So one of the problems that I have is that these ridges, this wood there's no ridge here. So I'm having to like cut some little pieces so that the wood's not going to push down if we stand on that end. So the same for that end as well, where there is no line there. So I just measured the gaps and then cut some little pieces and then just sanding it down to get rid of all the horrible edge on it. So I've nearly put everything in. I've given everything a little dollop of Sikaflex. Basically I've gone through 2 of these and I'm just about there. To be honest, I could do with a bit more to fill in some bits that I've missed to make it a bit stronger. So we've got 3 pieces in now, starting to come together. My tip is to measure, because they're never square, so measure from there to there, from there to there, and then the same across from each end, and then cut them out to that shape. Make sure it's dead snug, and then just use a wooden mallet to tap them in, and then if it's a bit tight, just get a bit of sandpaper and sand down the edges so that they're nice and smooth. I'll show you now. Comes out like that, but obviously the saw doesn't make for a very nice neat job. So I just got some sandpaper and just basically give it a quick little, it makes a bit of a mess, but give it a little rough. And then turns into a nice smooth edge. So that's it for this evening. I've got the floor battens in and about 8 pieces of kingspan in. We'll finish the rest off tomorrow because it's started to rain. Right, so it's the next morning and just come and checked it, and it's all gone rock hard, the Sikaflex. So I've given it a good pull and a wobble and a shake. So that's all nice and tight, that's not going anywhere. I made a few mistakes where I'm going to have to fill some in on the kingspan, but yeah, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 and all the rest to do to fill in, so let's do that now. Okay, so I basically now I've just gone round and sort of patched all the holes where I was a little bit thin, just kind of shoved in a load more around the edges like this bit just to fill out, to make sure that they're nice and tight. And then now I'm going to foil tape. Okay, so we're more or less done with the foil tape. So we've just kind of put one coat, well, one strip, but one coat over the lot. We've tried to go right into the corners of the van. We've used about nearly two kingspan boards. I've used 1.5 of these 75mm foil taped. So that's how she looks right now. Right guys, the plan for today is I want to get this wooden floor cut and put into place. But before I do that, basically I've been having a bit of trouble with a Ford Transit because unlike most vans, when your floor is here, there's like a little lip or metal here that you can like vapor barrier to. And then that's like your floor safe vapor barrier, excuse me. Whereas what I've done is I've had to like go right to the van, but then I'm worried that when the van gets cold and condensates, the condensation is going to drip down and into my floor and make the bottom of the wood wet. So I think I'm going to have to put a piece of wood across here and then vapor barrier up to that and have my floor lower than that. So let me know what you think. I mean, by the time you watch this, it'll be too late anyway, because they'll have decided something. So, and then the other bit is obviously I've just like cut random pieces and put them in, and there's still lots of like little gaps. So I've decided that although I didn't want to use it, I'm just going to use some expanding foam just to put in the corners, really, just so there's definitely as less gaps as possible. Okay, so here is it when I've basically put the expanding foam in. It's been in about half an hour, 40 minutes. It's nearly dry. I'm ready to cut it off soon. So yeah, the expanding foam, it's done the job. So basically you can see all these gaps it's filled where I didn't. So I'm just going to run a Stanley knife blade, cut that off. Then I've cut a lot of these battens to size. Like I said, I was worried about my vapor barrier being touching the condensating on the wall and running under the floor. So I think what I'm going to do is basically put like these battens there to give my flooring an edge, and then foil tape it up to that, so that when I push my floor up, it'll only go up to there, and then I've got sort of my depth for the floor vapor barrier. It's an idea, I'm not sure whether it'll work or not, but I'm just going to go with it. Okay, so I've just trimmed up and neatened that edge so that I can fit my piece of wood in there nice and flush. Morning guys, so basically it's another day on the van, trying to get this floor done, but I think I might have messed up. I think I should have, I'll show you now on new. So I've cut out this box and I just need to like make some straight edges and then sand down there, but I've only left that much side on the other bit to go around. And I think it was a bit of a mistake in hindsight to go across the wheel arches. I think I should have cut it across and done it in two sections, so like a piece around there and then another piece touching it in the middle around there, rather than trying to do a full width piece to go across both wheel arches. So we've kind of managed to get it in somewhere near. I think I'm gonna have to plane a little bit around the edges of these, and unfortunately I thought this bit was going to be just enough to be on my middle of the piece of my wood, so I could put a couple of screws in, but I think I might have just missed it. So and then I might be a little bit short of my wood there as well, so I might not be able to hit through. So we've managed to get this piece in around the wheel arches, and then we've gone for that big piece down there. And then we're gonna have to do some little pieces down here, but fortunately I've cut this a little bit too tight. So I mean, I wanted it tight so that you couldn't see this join, but I mean you can see the gap there. That's perfect, because in case in the heat the wood can swell a little bit. So where it's really tight, you can already hear a little bit where the wood's gonna rub. So I'm gonna have to basically, tip is if it's a bit tight, just use your edge, get a pencil and hold it against there. So now I've got to sand the wood down to that bit just to stop this gap being so tight and squeaking. So as you can see, I nearly sanded it down to that line. So just a little bit sand block, P40 sandpaper. And there we have it. Our floor is laid. So tomorrow we basically got to pull all the floor up because it's just laid down, and then use the foil tape to cover any holes that we've scratched. Maybe just sand down a little bit of the wood to make it a bit more smoother. Then we're going to cut like little rivets out of the holes, and then put like called a little biscuit, so it'll go half in this one, half in this one, and knit them together. And then follow our red tapes, which means we've got pieces of wood there. Screw them all down, and yeah, and the floor is done. Right, so it's a new day, so I'm gonna get basically it's Sunday the 11th, so England are playing today. So I've got a couple, and I'm bowling, so I've got 2 hours to get this floor out, foil tape up the floor, get it back in and start screwing a few bits down. That's probably all I get done, so let's go. Okay, so there it is, all brushed. So there's no dust anymore or dirt on it. Then there's lots of little patches like this where the foil barrier's been caught and broke, or you know, gaps where it's caught, so I've just got to go around and foil tape all this back up. So what these little biscuits, and you basically just cut like a little hole in there, and then you put half of it in there and half in the other piece of wood so that they nip together and don't move. Joe is coming round with a little 2mm sort of drill bit. She's doing the pilot holes, and then I've got, rather than like a tool to chunk it out, I've got this really chunky drill bit, and I'm just drilling a little bit a hole on top, so that basically when we do the screws, they've got a little hole for them to sit inside, rather than sort of like that one that we first did. So I can feel that. Obviously that's just going to rip our laminate or our floor, so I'm having to do little holes so that it sits nice and flush, so that when we sand it you won't feel the screw. Here are the biscuits where they're going to come into this piece. So if I draw around, then I now know that I've got to cut a hole so that that biscuit can fit into this piece, so that'll nip up nice and tight. So here we are, you can see the biscuit is in this piece, and I've cut that out, and then when I knit these together, it's then stuck in by that. Okay, so I've done pilot holes and then a few bigger holes for the top of the screw, but the battery's run out. So just while I'm waiting for that, so that this is nice and smooth, so when I put the lino on, like that one, you can feel all the jagged edges, and you can see how smooth that one's gone. So I'm just running around with some sandpaper and just making it as smooth as possible, so that when the lino goes on, you can't feel it. So there we have it. There's the screws, so basically pencil marked where the wooden beams are underneath. So obviously I'm screwing into some sort of support rather than the Celotex board, so you could see the squares where they've been. So yeah, drill a little 2mm pilot hole, then this end of the screw is 10mm, so then I've done a little couple of mil in, so 10mm and then a couple of mils down, just so that when I screw these in, the top of that sits flush like that inside the wood. So yeah, and then just put all them screws. I'm just waiting for my drill to charge, and then I'm just going to go run round and go bzz, 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 and drill them all in. There we have it. And obviously I've got to do the same for these pieces, and then we're done. So once all these screws are screwed in and then nice and tight and then sanded, obviously I've got to put a bit of filler over the top so that that's nice and level, then sand that back down, because at the moment you can feel that as it's clicking. So if we lay laminate, it's going to like dibble in dimps, so I'd rather just fill them with some sort of filler and sand it so it's all smooth. Nearly there though.